preach it anywhere. No pay. I'm telling you. Just learned to live on nothing. Absolutely N-O-T-H-I-N-G, nothing. Serious. But I says, I'm not going to go on the benefit. I says, I'm not going to go out there and get another job like I see some preachers do to compensate so they can hold that position. I says, Father, if we eat out of garages, garbage bins, we will. I says, you call me to preach the gospel and I'm going to stay with it. You see? So it's an attitude. And it wasn't easy. I got married. My wife had a car, $1,000 in the bank, man. I says, look, I'm sorry, but we need the car for the ministry. And we need the $1,000 too. My wife is a wonderful woman. Boy, I tell you what, she got some stories to tell. We learned how to live in a Honda Civic. You ever tried to sleep in a Honda Civic on the ministry? You say, why'd you stay in a motel? Couldn't afford it. Then I blew it up and got a Hillman Hunter. Little Hillman Hunter. We learned how to sleep in the Hillman Hunter too. Stayed anywhere. Lived anywhere. To get to a meeting, to set the captives free. To preach the gospel. You see, it's true. But God makes a way. He makes a way. And then 7 years ago, he says, come over here to Australia. I freaked out. I says, I don't know nobody over there, Lord. He says, I do. I mean, I've never been out in New Zealand. It was a big thing. I was up in Auckland and I said to the Lord, I says, Lord, I know you want me to leave New Zealand, but before I leave New Zealand, let someone come to me and ask me to preach in Kaitaia. And a young woman came up to me, a youth group, the Baptist church. She said, Mr. Mudford would like to come to Kaitaia and preach. I says, thank you, I'll come. So we hired a little truck and we drove up to Kaitaia up there and had wonderful meetings up there. And then God says, I want you to move to Australia. It wasn't easy. I didn't think I'd get through the airport. It's still not easy. You know, I mean, I had to work through a lot of things. I really do. You got no idea. You got a criminal record, man, that can mess you up for good. To get in and out of countries. But when God's in it, he makes a way. I arrived in Sydney and I rented a little flat 7 years ago. I thought Sydney's the best place to be. But the landlady thought a minister and a priest was turning up. I arrived there, dog collar, studs, real studs, all my old bikey leathers. I says, I am the minister. She freaked. She was worried about her neighbours. Well, God didn't want me in Sydney, he wanted me in Queensland, so it wasn't too hard to get my bond money back. You know, it wasn't easy. Rejection. God called me to Australia. I had one speaking engagement in Chinchilla. One pastor in Chinchilla wrote to me and took a risk, because I knew he didn't know me, and says, you can come and speak on Sunday night. I drove from Sydney to Chinchilla, a long way. I arrived in Chinchilla. That's where I started my ministry in Sydney, in Australia. Then I preached there. He sent me to Roma. The pastor's wife at Roma had never seen a bikie preacher. She'd come down to smell me. I'm sitting in the pastor's office here, you know, and she's, oh. And then they sent me to Quilpie, and I preached in Quilpie. But I went up and down the Queensland coast, driving, preaching. I'd go to churches and they wouldn't have me, because I didn't probably look the part or they're suspicious of me. I says, no worries, get my attitude right, I'll go to the next place. I says, I'm an evangelist. I can help your church. I can help people win people to the Lord. I can stir your troops up for evangelism. You know? And that was my message. And I'd get into some places I couldn't get into others. And I'd get in the car and drive to the next place. And that's how I lived for years around Australia. Just when I couldn't preach in a town, I'd get my cross and walk up and down the main street there till the newspapers come down and did my story there. So I got a bit of credibility and I could get into a high school. And then finally, at the end of the week, I might get into a church. It's true. I'll tell you. It's true. Everybody wanted me out there, but nobody wanted me in the church. But I had to learn attitudes. I says, Lord, I'm going to see this through. You brought me to Australia. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to do everything you called me to do. I don't care what it is. I'm going to do it. That's it. You make a way. He's always made a way. I walked into TV stations and got on TV. Walked into newspaper offices and got on the newspapers there. Walked into radio stations and got on radio stations out there. Just evangelise up and down the nation. Mainly to the lost. 99% of my ministry has been to the lost. You've got to stay out there and get amongst them. I came down to Sydney and God says, I want you to minister in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And I got the AA book there. I went right across Sydney, night after night after night, ministering in 12-step AA programs who most of them reject Jesus Christ. And they'd ask me to speak, having been a recovered alcoholic, and I'd get up there and I'd say, well, my name's Kevin Mudford, and I'm sober today, and I'm a recovered alcoholic, thanks to my higher power, whom I choose to go, Jesus Christ. And there'd be 30 to 40 alcoholics there, you know, sucked into what I call a program that's rejected Jesus Christ. I don't like talking about Jesus in there. I says, Jesus set me free. He set me free. No, they'd gawk at you like that. 7 nights of the week. You know? That's how we lived. Then one day, I got sick and tired of living the way I was living. I was married, and my wedding picture was rolled up in the boot of my car. And I just was tired of living that way. And a man came up to me and he said to me, Kevin, you need a motorhome. I says, a motorhome? I'd love to have a motorhome, somewhere where I could at least have a bit of privacy in my marriage. A bit hard when you stay in people's homes, mate. You can't blow off, mate. You can't blow your nose, mate. You can't do nothing like that. Thank God they're laughing anyway. Now, I'm not trying to be derogative. That's a fancy word, isn't it? But you know what it's like. I can't stay in hotels, so I can't afford it. You've got to stay in people's homes all the time. I love people, but after a while, man, you know, you get tired of just sitting there in the corner there answering questions. It's true. And some of the places you'd end up in, I'm telling you. I had a classic after meetings. Mainly a woman would come up to me and say to me, Kevin, would you and your wife like to come around to our place for a meal during the week? But really what they were saying, Kevin, would you come around and save my family? Look, please, you know, don't get me wrong, I love people, but boy, it wasn't always easy. And I tell you what, God says, I've got a motorhome for you, a lovely motorhome. And Kenneth Copeland bought me a motorhome along with the Assemblies of God. 7 weeks. Put my faith out for this motorhome. It cost $35,000. I don't have that sort of money. I still don't. I mean, you're looking at broke. But it doesn't stop me preaching. It doesn't stop me preaching. Is it? You know, I'm not a prosperous, rich evangelist. Absolutely not. You know? And it's probably good because it keeps me looking to Jesus. You know? Keeps me looking to Jesus. It was great. I went out and bought my wife. Someone gave us some money. I bought my wife a nice dress. $100 that dress. You know? I mean, I've changed, man. I was in the shop with a wife and a woman shop there, man, and stayed there and picked the dress out and watched her put it on. I mean, that's how much I've changed. My wife is a hero. You know? My wife, the attitude of my wife there is simply this. True story. I tell true stories. You know, she will live out of op shops here and put me first and put the ministry first before she wants to look after herself. You know? That's the attitude of my wife. You know? Serious. She say, "Can I?" Because what comes first? You know, you've got to put petrol in the car to get to the place to preach the gospel. Pick up the dress along the way somewhere else. You know. And so, that's how we've lived. And just gone anywhere. Jails after jails. I was in Long Bay Prison 2 weeks ago. preaching in the jail, Long Bay prison there. These are places where